This is Solo in the Shop, episode 25. On today's show, I want to give you a little bit of action from the shop and have a quick discussion about cosmetic standards. Let's dive in. Whether you are a hobbyist, weekend warrior, making commissions for friends and family, or already a full-time maker, if you are solo in your shop, this is the show for you. I'm Ronald Lowe's, the host of Solo in the Shop, a woodworking podcast discussing everything from current projects, tools and techniques, decisions around running a small business, and much more. So if you frequently find yourself alone and covered in sawdust, follow my journey and we can be solo in the shop together. Hello, friends. It's been a crazy busy week. If you listened to last week's show about Facebook Marketplace listings and the business I was getting from that has done nothing but continue. I spent all day Sunday writing quotes. One of those converted on Monday, have several that are still in process, and so the sales side is looking really healthy right now, so I'm excited about that. On Friday, I took the 10-foot book-matched dining table out to Enfield, Massachusetts, which is out by Lebanon, which is right on the New Hampshire-Vermont border. So it took me about an hour and 45 minutes to get out there. The table delivery went flawlessly. It's always nice when things go in, the legs attach, nothing strips, everything just worked great. The table looked amazing in the space. I was really happy with how that all worked out. Because I was so far out there, it was, just after lunchtime by the time I finished. And the family that lived out there recommended a lunch spot. And I also had noticed that there was a Shaker Village in Enfield, Massachusetts. And I had listened to an episode of Copper Pig's podcast, The Woodworking is BS. I have a clean rating, so I'm not going to say what that is. But if you look it up, it's the full word. Anyway, they did an episode talking about the contribution of shakers to furniture and culture in general. And so I was intrigued, and I went to the Shaker Village and Museum in Enfield, Massachusetts, and took a little tour there, looked at tons of chairs and cabinets and tables and brooms. The Shakers evidently were the ones who took what was previously a round bristle broom and flattened it so that it would move dust in lines rather than just making small brush strokes. And they had lots of examples of different styles and sizes of not only just household brooms, but dust brooms and whisks and things like that. The Shaker knobs and ladder back chairs. It was all very interesting to look at, preserved pieces and how sturdy they were. Maybe not all real comfortable, but a definite contribution to kind of the vocabulary of furniture. So it was great to get that little bit of history, and it made sense while I was doing that delivery way out there to take that side trip. I've also been listening to a couple books about selling. I picked up Ray Edwards' book called How to Write Copy That Sells, and that was very useful. I want to go back through it and actually take notes on certain sections and pick out pieces that I can apply even now, without doing a total rewrite and a total strategy pivot. But there are things that were in that book that are easy to pull out and say, okay, I'm going to take this one point and I'm going to implement this. So that'll be an exercise for probably next week. But it's kind of got my creative brain working in the background on what I should be doing for selling. And it's not the kind of selling, if you've listened to the podcast, I am not into sounding like a car salesman or an infomercial. It is just the general approach to how do you talk with a prospect, position your offering in a way that makes it clear that you're listening to what the customer is saying and what they're asking for, and not just saying, well, I only make live edge tables, so don't you want a live edge table? No. I want to know what's their space situation, how many people are they trying to seat, what is the rest of the decor in their house, what's their urgency, or when do they want to receive this, and what's their feeling on metal legs versus wooden legs, or having an apron or not having an apron. And I'd rather focus my sales conversation on that. And even with the strategy of writing a sales page, the same idea holds true. It's just, how do you phrase that, and what strategies do you use to kind of, through text, walk a prospect through the steps that it takes before you get to, hey, this is what I can offer you and this is how much it is. And there's several steps that they need to go through, right? They need to learn who you are, learn whether you actually can do what you say you do. They need to know that they're being heard, and they need to understand the process and know that you're going to deliver and you have some guarantee, you're removing risk. And all of that needs to happen before you say, yeah, it's going to be $3,000 for this table. So, great book. I'm also in the middle of Influence, which was recommended. And that is a disturbing book only because it exposes a lot of automatic reactions to situations. As a quick example, I'll say that one of the things that they point out is that if you offer a gift to someone, it automatically creates in the recipient this need to reciprocate, they know that they owe you something in the future. And what they owe you doesn't have to be proportional. So you can give them a relatively small gift, and then down the road, you can make a pretty big ask, and they're going to feel obligated to do that. And these are not necessarily tactics that are great. They're great to be aware of so that if you're on the receiving end of it, but it's kind of disturbing how easily it is for salespeople to manipulate their prospects into action. And so that's kind of why I'm continuing. I don't want to necessarily implement all of these things, but I want to be aware of them, and it's intriguing. There's 7, I think, different categories of kind of action and response pairs that are explored. So it's very interesting customer psychology and sales psychology. And so I'm enjoying that book as well. So I recommend both of those, How to Write Copy That Sells and Influence. I wanted to take a minute to talk about cosmetic standards. And one of the things that I've been doing in the last month, especially with new prospects, is when I send them an estimate or a quote, I am sending them 2 other articles in the same email. The first one is an article I wrote about working together. It's like what to expect when you work with me. The other is my cosmetic standards. And I'm sending that just so that I can be assured that I've taken steps to make sure that they know that what they're getting is a handmade product and not a factory-made, veneer-covered, slab of perfection. It's something that expresses that there are variations in the wood. I am not picking wood based on, is it perfect? I encourage them to see the wood the way I do and embrace and celebrate the variations and the imperfections, because that's nature. That's reality, and it's beautiful. I also, in my cosmetic standards, stress that I'm not staining wood to match some other piece of furniture in their home. That is a whole art into itself that I am not a master of. If they want me to stain a piece of wood, I'm happy to do it, but that's not an attempt to perfectly match something else in their home. I will give them some samples. I'll take some offcuts and stain those and say, this is what it's going to look like when it's done. Do you want me to keep going with this? I've done the same thing with paint. I have the same thing in my cosmetic standards about epoxy and epoxy color. There's no predicting exactly what color epoxy will be. Even when you're just doing flat black, it is gradients. It is variation of black. And when you get into the blues and the greens and the reds and the yellow and the gold and all the colors, there's no telling exactly what it's going to look like. I can give them, again, a small sample and say, this is the pigment that I'm going to use. But the exact dilution and concentration and brightness of the color, and if there's metallic pigment, those things are all going to change and be variable based on how it actually mixes together, how the temperature in the air affects the exothermic reaction and the movement of the epoxy, and that affects the brilliance of the pigment and the metallic flake that's in the pigment. So it's very random. And again, celebrate and appreciate the natural variation in that. The other thing in the cosmetic standard is just a paragraph about wood movement and the fact that, the wood is not being encased in a way that prevents it from moving. So as things get humid, the wood will expand. As it dries out, it will contract. Each season, the table may be a different size and it may crack. I put C-channel under the tables to prevent cupping and things like that, but nothing is going to overcome all the forces of moisture and expansion. There's a lot of cells in that wood fiber, and each one of them is absorbing moisture and giving off moisture depending on humidity and temperature. So as a woodworker, we know this, but I need to make sure that clients who are taking delivery of a piece of handmade furniture understand it, so that I don't get a call back later saying, what is going on with my table? There is something just not right. And I just want to be upfront with them so that they are fully informed when they are making their purchase decisions. So cosmetic standards, I grab mine from Zach Vaught and his Iron by Iron Woodworks, which I think that website is gone. I was trying to find it the other day for some reference material, and that site seems to be completely turned off. But I got a lot of value while it was there, and I was glad that I pulled that stuff down, and I manipulated it for my own purposes. I edited that document down to be specific to what I do, because Iron by Iron did a lot of rustic furniture, and I do none. So there was nothing about being rustic or distressed wood or anything like that, but there was a lot of information that kind of got me onto a train of thought that I was able to express, and so that's where my cosmetic standards document came from. So sales are going well, had a great delivery, reading a couple books, and sharing my cosmetic standards with customers is what I wanted to share with you this week. That is all I have. It's a nice short one, and I will talk to you all again very soon. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to me at SoloInTheShop@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got value from it and would like to help the show grow, I'd appreciate a review wherever you listen. Be sure to check the show notes for links to my socials or any extra stuff we discussed today. Until next time, stay safe in your shop, and we'll talk again soon.